Enemies and dark factions are an integral part of the good versus evil theme present in World of Warcraft. From small bands of gnolls and quillboars to demons, dragons, liches, and many others. They're the reason we pursue most of the objectives within the game, enter into forsaken bastions crawling with danger, Onyxia, Cthulhu, Hakar. We all have memories of facing down some of the most powerful beings in Azeroth. Today though, I want to take us back to one boss, one villain from the classic era who I think is underappreciated and underrated, but is also one of the most fearsome antagonists in the entire game. Despite being the star of a very long, very innovative quest line, most players pay attention to the gear instead of the lore, missing out on a tragic story of magic, mystery, and mercenaries. I completed this adventure for the first time just a few months ago, and I was fascinated by the new dark story elements it introduced at level 60. I hope you're prepared. This is the story of Lord Valthalak, one of the most terrifying villains in classic WoW. Before we dive into this convoluted tale, I want to offer a brief explanation as to where this quest and its gear rewards fit in from a gameplay perspective. As you level up in WoW, you complete quests out in the world and find more powerful items, and closer to max level, you might dive into some high-level dungeons to earn more powerful rare or epic loot. All 9 classes have a full set of dungeon gear that can be acquired from different instances, and that's some of the best equipment you can get outside of raiding. Gear from raids is organized into tiers that progress in power level, with each raid or two usually corresponding to one tier. For example, throughout classic WoW, raiders progress from tier 1 in Molten Core to tier 3 in Naxxramas, with a few other sets in between. This system is key to note because the sets from high-level dungeons are referred to as tier 0 because they were ideal for players wanting to get into the raiding scene. I said were because with the release of patch 1.10 in 2006, one additional step was added to this progression, a quest line that allowed players to upgrade their tier 0 to a new set called tier 0.5, which was very similar in power to tier 1 from Molten Core, but didn't require you to assemble a full raid. This is of course the quest we're talking about today. From the beginning, it was widely viewed as a sort of catch-up system to help casual or intermediate players out if they hadn't been keeping up with raiding from the beginning, and in every new version of Classic Sense, this feature has been in the game right from the start. So as we go through this journey, keep in mind that this story isn't just interesting from a lore perspective. The entire reason it was built was to introduce a new type of character progression into the game, one that many players, myself included, consider to be a worthwhile endeavor. My one disclaimer is that I completed this quest on the Alliance side, and while I'm pretty sure the story is the same on the Horde, I'm always happy to hear about extra details you found down in the comments. With all that being said, let's finally get right into it. Deep within the city of Ironforge, an inconspicuous visitor is the starting point for today's adventure. Deliana, a woman who keeps to herself near the high seat, starts off with an intriguing bit of dialogue. "Try not to draw too much attention. I'm waiting for the king to grant me an audience. Not that I mind waiting, I feel pretty safe around all these burly guards." We don't know why she's here, or what she might need protecting from, but we'll find out soon enough. She goes on to explain that she has a set of armor she's willing to part with for a small favor, which is of course the tier 0.5 outfit for your particular class. After retrieving some blood samples from the beasts of Winterspring, along with the corresponding tier 0 bracers and some gold, we experience a dramatic reveal, with several spectral assassins decloaking within the throne room and attacking Deliana. And we get our first real bits of exposition here as well. "Your fate is sealed, Deliana. You will pay for your trespasses against Lord Valthalak." I didn't mean to drag you into this. Ever since we took on a job to steal Lord Valthalak's spellbook, everyone involved has wound up dead or missing. Trying to find out more about my predicament has been nearly impossible. The smuggler that hired us has vanished, and Anthion Harmon, our mercenary company's leader, is dead. Come to think about it, most everyone involved is dead. I'll understand if you don't want to be involved in any of this. But of course, we do want to be involved. An entire set of gear is on the line. The crux of this story hinges on this heist, this attempted thievery by the former mercenary crew Deliana was once a part of, which we'll soon know as the Veiled Blade. With the bracers upgraded, it's time for the next step, finding a way to contact Anthion's ghost and learn more about what's going on with these spectral attacks. Deliana sends you to Muck's Mana Scrambler in Gadgetzan, an engineer who desires to make what he calls an extra-dimensional ghost revealer to help with the problem. The next few steps in the chain don't contain many details about the core plot, but instead require you to travel across Azeroth to collect several engineering and ethereal ingredients to help create the gadget needed to pierce the veil between the living and the dead. Going in between the Plaguelands, Silithus, Winterspring, and the Burning Steppes, there is a lot of travel, but meeting Viel the Imp with all of his little unique quips down in Darkwhisper Gorge is a nice silver lining. Or maybe a fell elemental lining? Anyway, returning to Muck's to craft the trinket, then to Deliana to deliver it, brings this stage to a close. And you earn some new gloves and a belt for your service. But there's still much to do to unravel the tragedy of the Veiled Blade, and perhaps find a solution to it. Keeping with the trend of all the mercenaries meeting untimely, gruesome ends, Anthion was rumored to have been slain by the rampant scourge in the Plaguelands after embarking on a solo mission. In front of the gates to Stratholme, the burning city, trusting the goblin and using the ghost revealer seems to pay off. I suspect that the trinket lets you see Anthion and some of the other ghosts without extra attunement because of their spectral essence. When you originally made the detector, you gathered 3 types of ghostly ectoplasm from different regions of the map, and putting these all together must have calibrated it to sense most varieties of quote-unquote regular ghosts. We'll talk more about the special cases later. Anthion wants to help you, but his own mission is perhaps even more desperate. His wife, a priestess within the Argent Dawn, has been captured and is soon to be executed by Baron Rivendare, the undead tyrant of the city. This quest is the origin of the infamous Baron Run challenge, where you and your allies must enter the city and conquer the undead district in less than 45 minutes, saving Anthion's wife and completing his quest. While this was once a fairly major accomplishment in vanilla WoW, modern groups usually don't have too much difficulty in rescuing the captive, who gives you her locket to bring back to the spirit of her husband. We never see her again, but it's possible she continued to serve until the time of the war against the Lich King, perhaps venturing to Northrend to help with the Argent Crusades campaign. Satisfied knowing his wife is safe, Anthion is now ready to help with the next phase of the plan, adding a few more pieces to the puzzle surrounding Lord Valthalak and the spectral stalkers we've come across. We didn't realize the importance of Valthalak's medallion, so it was divided along with the rest of the spoils. The first piece was taken by a dwarf named Theldrin. Last I heard of him, he'd become a gladiator for the Dark Iron Dwarves. Getting him to fight you is going to present a bit of a challenge, though. This is the first mention of Lord Valthalak's medallion, an artifact that is central to this story and one that eventually becomes even more desirable than the spellbook that was originally sought after. It was fractured in 3 pieces, and in order to solve this mystery, we're going to need to reform it. In a way, this is another personal matter for Anthion. When he tried to reclaim the fragment himself to undo the spectral curse, his former partner beat him within an inch of his life. To challenge Theldrin to a fair fight, a bit of preparation is in order. After gathering some crafting materials, Anthion helps you fashion them into what is known as a Banner of Provocation, a display of Theldrin's family crest that will provoke him into battle. The final element of this scheme is an enchantment of instigation for the banner, obtained from one of Anthion's old allies, Falarin Treeshaper within the libraries of Dire Maul. One of the reclusive Chendralar, Falarin is hesitant to impart such magic easily, and only after thinning the ogre invaders of the city and bringing him more supplies does he give it. With the banner now complete, Falarin sends you on your way, and you now have what you need to issue the challenge to Theldrin. However, as you leave Dire Maul, you and your allies are ambushed by another group of stalkers. Your meddling ends here. Lord Valthalak shall have his revenge. It seems that your efforts to unmask the terror being inflicted on the mercenaries have drawn the ire of the elusive Valthalak, and you're now one of the top targets. It's uncommon, perhaps even unique, for a situation like this to unfold within the structure of classic WoW. A villain you've never met, never even seen, is sending henchmen from the Shadow Realm after you for messing with his schemes. The stakes keep rising, and one can only hope that, back in Ironforge, Deliana has found some sort of protection from the onslaught. Blackrock Depths is your next destination, where Theldrin and his squad of goons wait within the innards of the city. Entering the Ring of Law and planting the banner works as intended, and Theldrin and a few of his followers rush out to meet you. For the uninitiated, this is probably the most difficult fight in the dungeon, a theme we'll continue to see as we move through this story. After a chaotic 5v5 spectacle inside the ring, Feldrin falls, and in his belongings, you find the top piece of Valthalak's amulet, an object that gives you an uneasy feeling right from the start. This object feels wrong to the touch, as if an evil within is trying to escape. Just what we're looking for. With the fragment in hand, we make the journey back to the Plaguelands, where Anthion's spirit has held on long enough to give us a few parting words of wisdom. Valthalak's soul was stored in this amulet. In our greed, we foolishly split it into 3 parts, not knowing the curse that would await us. The only way to stop Valthalak's spell is to put the amulet back together. Return to Deliana and tell her that Bodley is her only hope of finding the remaining pieces. I, for once, shall rest in peace. I wish you the best of luck. You shall need every bit of it. And with that, we say farewell to Anthion Harmon, former leader of the Veiled Blade. The revelation here is also a big deal. We're now basically holding on to WoW's version of the One Ring, or at least a piece of it, a vessel harboring Lord Valthalak's still intimidating presence, and one that is probably watching our every move. Returning to Ironforge, another chapter of our quest is ended, and Deliana rewards us with upgraded boots, leggings, and shoulder pads for the trials to come. Some history has come to light, and yet other details remain hidden, and it won't be until much later when all becomes clear. We're just pawns moving through this journey, but as we pay attention to and keep track of the details, many more secrets will be revealed. To track down the other 2 fragments of the amulet, Deliana recommends traveling south to Blackrock Spire, where the mage Bodley attempted to re-enter the spire and solve the mystery, but never returned. As it turns out, we need to use our ghost revealer again, as the lone gnome was no match for the brutal forces of the mountain, but it seems even in death he is resolute in finishing the mission. So, you must have been sent by some living member of my former mercenary company, am I right? Of course I am, but enough idle chit-chat. There's a great deal of work for you and I if we're going to put things right and return Lord Valthalak's spirit to him. At first glance, this might sound hopeful or even motivational, but it's also a little bit unnerving to hear the plan is to give Valthalak what he wants by returning his amulet to him. We'll talk more about that later. Bodley goes on to recount the disastrous raid into the upper spire that led to such horrific results. The Veiled Blade was hired by a goblin smuggler to steal a spellbook from Lord Valthalak, the leader of Blackrock Spire before General Dracasath. To put that into perspective, Dracasath is the final boss of the Spire and one of the lieutenants of Nefarian, the dragon's son of Deathwing. That makes Dracasath, and by proxy Valthalak, 2 of the most powerful villains found outside of an official raid in WoW. And from what we've learned of Valthalak and his methods so far, it's possible he was, and still is, an even more formidable foe. Anyway, the Veiled Blade managed to come out on top, but the Necromancer's contingency plan kicked in, knocking the company off guard as they were divvying up the treasure. The amulet was fractured, and in a rage, Valthalak's spirit summoned assassins from the Netherworld to drive the group out, vowing to pursue them to the ends of Azeroth to reclaim his power. And as we know already, the group broke up afterward in an effort to hide away from the threat, but one by one, all but a few met untimely, unhappy ends. The next step, as explained by Bodley, is to find a way to summon Lord Valthalak and reunite him with the completed amulet. Returning to our spectral science lesson from earlier, I believe that, compared to the regular ghosts like Anthion and Bodley, the corrupted victims, including those with the amulet pieces, along with Valthalak himself, require more specialized attunements to summon and interact with the physical world. With Valthalak being tied so inherently to Blackrock Mountain and the element of fire, the summoning ritual requires 3 embers from fire elementals, Lord Incendius, Pyroguard Emberseer, and the Duke of Cinders. Getting these items is no easy feat, especially braving the treacherous sands of Silithus for the Duke, but placing all 3 within a hollowed brazier from the Argent Dawn allows for a more potent summoning ritual to be performed. Acquiring the 2 remaining pieces of the amulet is where things get murky. In a very strange twist, this is where the questline diverges into potentially 12 different realities. Not something you hear about every day in classic WoW. Let's walk through this. According to Bodley, there are 4 other parties who walked away from the Veiled Blade. Cormac the Necromancer, Isalian the Priestess, Mor Greyhoof the Druid, and Jirian and Sothos the Warriors. Of course, out of these 4, only 2 of them have the amulet pieces we need. So which ones do we have to track down? It turns out it can be any of them. This marks one of the very few times where a non-daily quest is randomized, and the left and right amulet pieces can be assigned to any of these 4, which is a really unique and different take on a major story like this. This does call into question which are the canon locations of the fragments, and whether or not there is some sort of weird parallel universe thing going on. But I'm pretty sure this is just to mix things up gameplay-wise. My personal bet would be on Cormac and more Greyhoof because those are the 2 mentioned most in the lore, but it could go down any which way. No matter which of the 2 you are specifically assigned, you'll have to track down a component of importance for both of them, boosting the brazier and attuning it to that specific character, or more accurately boss, since they've all been corrupted by Valthalak's influence. Let's take a look at each of these 4 encounters in detail, and see what other secrets we can learn about this ill-fated expedition. Isilian the priestess, who grew up in Starfall Village in Winterspring, traveled to Dire Maul in search of knowledge, but was slain by the wild things that now call the ruins home. Her spirit resides at the Grand Shrine of Eldrathar within the city. Morogh Greyhoof the druid never made it out of Blackrock Mountain. During the escape he fell, or was perhaps pushed off a ledge into the lower spire, where he was eventually found and eliminated by the spectral assassins. Jerian and Sothos were aspirants of the Scarlet Crusade, brutal knights who wished to vanquish the Scourge at any cost. However, after Sothos failed his final trial, Grand Crusader Dathrahand slew them both at the foot of the Crimson Throne within Stratholme. Cormac was perhaps the most interesting case, a 2-headed ogre mage who turned to necromancy after leaving the group, experimenting with the cursed spirits on Purgation Isle before enrolling at Scholomance beneath the Plaguelands. Unfortunately, his power was not strong enough to avoid the stalkers, and he perished deep within the laboratories of Ras Frostwhisper. One question that came up while I was researching this video was how Theldrin was able to survive for this long in Blackrock Depths when all the others were being mercilessly attacked. But there are a couple of explanations for this. The first is that, with his cronies and the support of the Dark Iron government, he could have planned to take them out whenever they stopped by. And the second is that Valthalak may have wanted to further some other dark scheme against the Dark Irons by having a corrupted gladiator among their ranks, so he held off on eliminating him for now. He's definitely the outlier among the amulet bearers, but in a story as convoluted as this one, there's bound to be some questions without concrete answers. After defeating 2 of these 4 bosses and freeing the spirits from the curse of Valthalak, they can finally be at peace, with many of them thanking you for your heroic deeds. At this point, all that remains is to help Bodley with a few final ingredients to attune the brazier. It's been a marathon of an adventure, but there's only one more step to be done. When alive, Lord Valthalak used to inhabit what is now the Beast's Chamber. Go there and use the Brazier of Beckoning to summon forth Lord Valthalak. It will reincorporate him, so he'll have to be killed again. Once you've dispatched Valthalak, use the amulet on his corpse. With his spirit reunified, he'll likely want his amulet back as well. Everything has led to this one final confrontation. Find a way to subdue the Warlock, then offer the reformed amulet as a sign of peace. As I've said previously, invading Upper Blackrock Spire is no simple task, and it's the most involved content outside of a raid. Vast halls filled with dark orcs, dragonkin, and even fouler abominations block your path, but on the very top floor lies your destination, the Furnace. Now the lair of a creature known as the Beast, it was once a site of depraved experimentation for Valthalak and his necromantic powers, and it is here where he will be called forth. The brazier is placed, and a wicked being appears, a half-humanoid, half-dragon creature wielding immense powers of darkness. Lashing out in a rage, Valthalak is bent on the destruction of those who have coveted his amulet.
"What is this pathetic spectacle I see before me? I hunger, and you look as if you may make for a passable appetizer."
The Warlock puts up an impressive 2-phase fight, with many regarding this as the most difficult boss in the instance, especially when you have to contend with an unending stream of spectral assassins personally guarding their master. But eventually, after many trials and tribulations, Lord Valthalak falls once more, his physical form dissipating and his spirit lingering in the room alone.
"How fortunate for you that I know you're not part of the original group that stole this from me. I will ignore your impertinence this time because you have done a noble thing today, returning the rest of my stolen spirit to me. Return to them before I change my mind and slay you where you stand. Go back and tell them that they are safe." For now.
And that's it. No more spectral attacks, no more cursed amulet. You've traded the medallion for the safety of the surviving mercenaries. But there's a cost too. With his spirit reformed, Valthalak could continue to haunt Blackrock Spire and come up with even more dastardly plans from the Shadow Realm. Whether as a pawn of Nefarian or as an independent evil, the Warlock is still a threat to Azeroth, even if he's not a threat to you right now. The quest here is even called Mea Culpa, Lord Valthalak, an admission of guilt that what the Veiled Blade did to this terrible villain was wrong. You basically take his side. And that's the essence of the dilemma. Valthalak's reach and power are so immense that you don't have another solution, at least within the scope of the game. His spirit seems to be invulnerable, and the only choice was to make peace with him before it was too late. A very strange and sort of bittersweet finale for this tale, one that leaves the door open for a villain to someday return or wreak havoc within the world. The last few steps of the quest involve reporting your success to Bodley and Deliana. The gnome lets us keep the enchanted brazier, and even gives us a so-called user manual that tells us a little more info about each of the ghosts, should we decide to resummon them someday. This is another element that is primarily for gameplay reasons, as the bosses do drop high-quality loot, but there are a few other details about each member of the group that you can check out too. We even get confirmation that the smuggler who hired the group, Gremnik Rizzlesprang, was also assassinated by the Stalkers at some point for his involvement. Back in Ironforge, Deliana congratulates us on a job well done, awarding us with a new chestplate and helm for our class, completing the quest line, and also our very own tier 0.5 outfit. Most players who speed through this story for the gear miss out on a ton of dark, intricate lore, or at least some of the cool details. I'm no serious raider, so I took my time with this quest, and I still show off my outfit in Season of Discovery today, along with Lord Valthalak's own staff. Good thing I found my way onto his good side though, because otherwise I might have been his next target. Shadowy minions, powerful spells, and a cheat code against death. That's a recipe for a terrifying villain, and our Forgotten Lord of Blackrock Spire sure fits the bill. There is one more thing to mention before I end today's video, and it's a deal that 99% of people probably never even knew existed. As I was pouring through these quests, checking out all those loose ends and piecing together the lore, I had one question. Was there any evidence of the smuggler Gremnik existing in the game at all? An item, a sign, a relative, anything? Or was he just mentioned in the text and that's all? It turns out there is something to find, or rather, someone. In the town of Booty Bay, in a loft you probably would never go to in a regular gameplay session, you can use the extra dimensional ghost revealer one more time. Here, you find none other than Gremnik Rizzlesprang himself. He even has a bit of conversational text that gives us one final detail. Valthalak's spellbook was sold on the black market, and it has not been seen since. I love this hidden NPC because he adds another layer of history on top of what you think you know about this town or region. No part of the quest leads you down here, which means this secret was intentionally put here just for fun, just for the completeness of the story being told. So next time you visit Booty Bay, know that the goblins are officially haunted by one of their own, stemming from a tragic adventure involving one of Azeroth's most evil warlocks. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and I hope everyone is having a great holiday season. I look forward to hearing from you down in the comments, and I'm curious to see how much of this storyline you did or didn't know. Until next time, may the Force be with you.